Meanwhile, new polls out this morning show Donald Trump is still among the GOP leaders in two key states. In New Hampshire, Trump leads among Republican voters with 21%. He's followed by Jeb Bush at 14. Scott Walker comes in at 12. John Kasich with 7%. Then in Iowa, Trump stands in second place just behind Scott Walker. And in an Iowa rally speech yesterday, Trump took shots at his main GOP rival there.
I read this horrible statement from his fundraiser about Trump. I said, oh, finally I can attack. Finally. Finally. I would have never done this. I didn't know. Because I hear the only one beating me in Iowa is Scott Walker, and not by that much.
Well, let's bring in Democratic pollster Fred Yang with a good morning to you, and good to see you, Fred. Is it getting harder and harder to write off Donald Trump? And as a pollster, how do you interpret his popularity?
I mean, look, you can't write him off right now. He is leading the Republican field in national and state polls, #1. I think #2, you know, Alex, with 16 Republican candidates, you really can't write off anyone. The field is so fluid. And I think #3, the interesting thing about Donald Trump's numbers in the Iowa and New Hampshire polls is he is, you know, what we call in politics, he doesn't seem to have long-term staying power. He has by far the highest negatives of any Republican candidate in any of those two states. And I think in New Hampshire, he was 53% unfavorable. In Iowa, Fred, he was 44%.
You're giving me these numbers. How do you reconcile that? How is it that he has such high unpopularity, unfavorable numbers, and yet heads to the top of the polls in others? How does that work?
Because he has the highest name recognition of most of the candidates other than someone like Jeb Bush. And Alex, he also has high favorables. So clearly right now in a crowded field, 16 candidates, voters are trying to figure out who to vote for, much less who the other 10 or 11 people are. He is benefiting right now from the fact that he has high name ID. Yes, he's a polarizing figure, but when you're polarizing, that means there's some folks who are favorable toward you, and right now those are the people he's getting. I think the question for Mr. Trump as we move forward is when the field winnows down from 16 to 10 to 8 to 4, is he still there? And I think that's when his high negatives could be his undoing against a 2 or 3 person field.
Yeah, I think the word polarizing, I think that right there is what explains it all, as you said. Let's look at the Democratic side here with Hillary Clinton by far leading the pack, but nipping at her heels Vermont independent Bernie Sanders. Do you think Hillary Clinton is vulnerable to a challenge from the party's progressive wing?
I think what Democrats want, and again, other reports have said this, Mrs. Clinton is in very strong shape, but I do think what Democrats want is a debate on the issues. There are, you know, very strong feelings in the party about issues such as income inequality. I think Democrats throughout the country want a debate. I think that's some of what is fueling Bernie Sanders and other candidates. But I think fundamentally, Democrats are comfortable with Mrs. Clinton. I think they feel good about her if she's a nominee. And look, I think any nomination, whether the Republicans, which is very fluid, or the Democrats, which seems a little bit more stable, we're still talking, we're still months away from when actual voters get to vote for president.
But if you're going to look at the snapshot right now, Fred, you have Mrs. Clinton not faring quite as well against a Republican opponent in 3 critical swing states. The latest Quinnipiac poll this week shows Clinton behind 3 GOP rivals in a hypothetical head-to-head. That would be in the states of Colorado, Virginia, and Iowa. Are there any party concerns about her long-term viability? Is anything going to look back to 2008?
No, I don't think so. I think from all accounts, she's running a stronger campaign than she was in 2008. She has had a very successful tenure as Secretary of State. Look, I think what these polls and all the polls are showing, Alex, is really how fluid things are in the country. Things seem to change month from month. I think we feel as a party that if it's a Democratic Party versus a Republican Party, we're in very good shape on issues such as immigration, such as the social issues, such as, in fact, economic issues. And look, these elections are about candidates, but they're also about issues also. And I think on a lot of these issues, the Democrats hold the upper hand.
So you touched on this just a second ago. It is July 2015 right now, Fred. How much is what happens right now going to affect November of 2016? Although I have to say, it does feel a little accelerated.
Look, I think every presidential election breaks new territory in terms of how the dynamics shift. Yeah, look, Alex, talking to my fellow consultants, both Democrats and Republicans, July 2015 feels like July 2016. So I think I think elections are about fundamentals. Number one, is President Obama's numbers going to be as good as they are a year from now as they are today? That's a big help for the Democrats. Is the Republican Party, Alex, going to be seen as out of the mainstream on some of these issues I mentioned? We don't know that a year from now. So I think while there's a lot going on now, I think some of it will have some impact in November 2016. I think fundamentally, this is still a day-by-day, month-by-month campaign.
Okay, sometimes it feels like hour by hour, Fred Yang. I'm just saying. Anyway, thank you so much.